مشاهدينا اهلا وسهلا فيكم بحلقه جديده من برنامجكم شؤون الناس Public Affairs. تحيه كبيره لكم وتحيه لضيوفنا كثير كبيره. اليوم معنا مفوض المحافظه والعقاري سام بيدون. سام, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Khodr. It's good to be here.
وايضا حيكون معنا لاول مره بصفه رسميه مخمن مدينه ديربورن سيري ديربورن Assessor Scott Miller. Thank you so much for being here as well.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. مشاهدينا بليز اعملوا شير لايك كومنت للفيديو لحتى يوصل كل الاكبر عدد من الناس. اليوم رح نحكي عن الضرائب بمدينه ديربورن، رح نحكي عن الابديتس الموجوده، رح نحكي عن الابيل، رح نحكي عن كل شيء هنيك في من تفاصيل كبيره وصغيره. حقيقه هذا الموضوع جدا حساس، موضوع جدا مهم لكثير منكم، فبليز اعملوا شير لايك وكومنت للفيديو وطرحوا اي سؤال او تعليق او استفسار بالكومنت. قبل ما نبلش بحديثنا بتشكر مثل العاده واتساب ميديا على اتاحتنا المنبر لنا كل خميس الساعه 8 لحتى نطلع مع ضيوف مختلفين بمواضيع مختلفه لحتى نجيب لكم كل شيء جديد ونفيدكم فيه. واكثر من هيك ايضا تحيه كثير كبيره لكل السبونسرز للشو، مانجوز، تهامس، ليمو اكسبرس، وايضا عندنا بلاجيو بانكويت سنتر، وكمان عندنا مالتي ميديا ستيشن واي بي لايتنج اند سبلايز. كلهم اخواننا وكلهم احبائنا. تحيه كثير كبيره لكم ولثقتكم لدعمكم فردا. طيب اليوم بدنا نبلش بالموضوع مباشره. Scott Miller, thank you and welcome again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys opening
Of
this
course,
up.
thank you for being here and welcome to the city of Dearborn. Sam, انت من اهل البيت، منك غريب على الاطلاق. بدنا نتشكرك كمان بالبدايه على كل جهودك اللي عم تعملها بوين كاونتي. حتى من اول بانديميك يعني انت تكاد الوحيد الاماني يعني مع الستيت ريب عبد الله حمود اللي بيقدم للعالم almost daily updates عن الكوفيد نمبرز وشو عم بيصير وما عم بيصير، وهلا ليتلي عشان الفاكسين. فاليوم كنت انت بتعمل فولنتير بالسيفيك سنتر، فيك بس تحكي لنا ببلش بالموضوع بس شوي هيك بريفلي عن الفاكسين ديستريبيوشن والابديتس والويب سايت بس لحتى العالم تسمع وتعرف وين فين يروحوا لحتى ياخذوا الفاكسين.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Khodr. بداية بس مشان يعني بشكل سريع، اليوم كان أول يوم بالنسبة للفاكسينيشن بالسيفيك سنتر، وبكرة والسبت والأحد راح يكون في فاكسينيشن من الساعة 9 للساعة 5، وهي الفاكسين للأشخاص اللي 65 بالسن وما فوق، وفيهم يعملوا ريجستريشن على cityofdearborn.org/covid. فأنا بنصح وبطلب من جميع المسنين بهذا العمر 65 وما فوق إنه يسجلوا وياخذوا الفاكسين. وإذا حدا عنده أي سؤال كمان فينا يبعثوا لنا مسج ونحن مستعدين لأي مساعدة.
ثانك يو سام، ممنونك. مثل ما قال سام أنا بدي ضم صوتي لصوته. أي حدا عنده شخص عمره 65 وما فوق بليز روح على الويب سايت cityofdearborn.org/covid-19.
/covid.
اوكي /covid بلا 19. وهنيك فيكم تعملوا ساين اب، فيكم تعبوا الابلكيشن لحتى تاخذوا موعد وان شاء الله بالشفاء والسلامه للجميع. Scott, again, welcome and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Dearborn. You've been here for the past year, pretty much officially as a city of Dearborn assessor.
Yeah.
Just since you're going to be, this is your first, hopefully, certainly not the last,
thank you.
appearance with us. You know, can you just tell us just brief about yourself, just so our audience can become very familiar with you?
Sure. Born and raised right here in the area. I mean, even though I just started working in Dearborn, I have been in this community for years. Love it. So one of the best, has the best restaurants around town. I'm just going to say that, okay? Been in the industry for real estate. I imagine that's what everyone's interested in. About 25 years. I'm a little bit of a unique guy in assessing. I got 3 degrees with 2 of them in real estate. I left government work for some years. I did it for about 18 years, a lot of equalization work. Worked with the former assessor, Gary Vanko. Then I left and I did a lot of some investment work, did some work in some other states, a lot of feasibility analysis and things. Ended up coming back to Michigan, got into assessing, moved over to Detroit. I managed the reappraisal for the commercial industrial work over there. And then came over here to Dearborn to handle the assessing. And here I am. That's the, all the bumps and stuff in between there, but here I am.
Thank you for being here, and just let me translate that if you don't mind.
Sure, no, appreciate it.
So سكوت ميلر هو المخمن لمدينة ديربون، يعني هو المسؤول عن تحديد التاكس ريتس، الفاليو، قيمة الضريبة العقارية إن كان على بيتك ولا على أي عقار بتملكه بمدينة ديربون. سكوت عنده خبرة فوق 25 سنة بالعقارات. هو اشتغل بكذا ولاية، اشتغل مع يعني شغل مثل يعني موظف كدولة كجفرمنت أكثر من 18 سنة، وايضا اشتغل بعده ولايات. اجى على ديترويت من كم سنه، رجع واشتغل بالتخمين ايضا هناك، وهلا حاليا هو استلم من حوالي السنه وشوي سيتي اوف ديربون اسسور محل جاري اللي كان قبله. فمشاهدينا برجع بذكر اي سؤال، اي استفسار، اي تعليق بليز اطرحوه، نحن هون على طول لكم بخدمتكم وضيوفنا كذلك الامر. طيب سام، بقينا حنبلش باول سؤال، اول موضوع، يعني اول جزء من الحلقه اليوم نحكي عن التاكس، عن التاكس اسسمنت دوكيمنت. هذا التاكس اسسمنت دوكيمنت اللي هلا العالم كلها المفروض يكون وصلته. سو اذا فيك بس تشرح لنا عنه بليز بالتفصيل شوي لحتى العالم تعرف انه شو اهميه هذا الدوكيمنت بالاول، وليش مهم نقراه، وعلى شو ينتبهوا اكثر شيء.
Okay, let me just mix it in English so Scott can be on the same page with us, because his Arabic is very rusty.
And then,
I'm working at it. I'm trying to prove it.
and then I can translate.
Then we will mix it.
No worries.
So every year in the first week of March, the city of Dearborn and all the cities, they will send out the assessment on the property taxes. Basically, the assessment will show the homeowner where their property stands in terms of value. And because of this high flying real estate market, the assessments have been going up for several years. Unlike the 2008-2009, back in 2008-2009, the market crashed, as you know. The values declined. And traditionally, you would see the assessed value higher than the taxable value. It's very important for people to know that the cities will tax you based on your taxable value, not the assessed value. Okay, so there's always a gap for those people, especially they have been in their homes for many years. You will see a difference between the assessed and the taxable value. In 2008-2009, the assessed value fell under the taxable value. Therefore, automatically, the cities had to adjust the taxable value. And people need to keep this in mind, and Scott will agree. The assessed value can never be lower than the taxable value. They have to be at least equal, or the assessed value a little bit higher. So when the assessments come out at this time of the year, people will have the opportunity to analyze. And they can, if they don't agree with the assessed value, then they can make appointments, and Scott can go over the appointments coming up now, starting next week.
Yes.
And you have the opportunity to go in front of the board and appeal your assessed value. And keep in mind, you don't appeal taxable value, you appeal assessed value. And that's something else that Scott will talk about. I've been doing this, by the way, for many years, I think, going back 24, 25 years, and I do that as a service to a lot of my clients, being in the real estate business, friends, and anybody that, asks me, I usually go out of my way to help them. And I don't do this for the money, by the way. This is just a service, a way of thanking the community, for doing this.
Yeah, that's great.
And by the way, since we're talking about this, I want to take this opportunity to give a special shout out to the Dearborn Community Council. أحبائنا اللي يعني بينوا in the last couple years when they started bringing the issues of the taxes and the assessments to the surface, and they're doing a great job, and they're very knowledgeable. They know what they're talking about, and I salute them. When you have people in any community get involved and ask questions, that's when you make a difference. And I believe this group of professionals, definitely they are making a difference in our community, and I applaud them for being involved in the process.
Absolutely, and I have to echo your voice because you know actually Limo Express is owned by Marwan Faraj هو خينا وحبيبنا وكمان بنوجه له بالعزاء لوفاة بنت عمه. So yes, certainly they did make many wake up calls. The DCC, Scott, and you know they did actually organize a rally. If I may call it in the mosque,
like a town hall,
like a town hall, you know. But was mashallah was very well attended right before the COVID hit, and you know, and then you know, so they do a great job at you know spreading education and informing people. Before I continue with you, Scott and Sam, I'm gonna go to Hassan. حسين قبل اللي عندك بس to see what's going on على الفيسبوك question and comments بدي بس حاول ترجم شوي من اللي قاله سام. انه هذا الدوكيمنت اخواننا اجاكم انتم هلا دوكيمنت المفروض هلا كل حدا يكون هلا اجاه دوكيمنت يلي هو الدوكيمنت هو تبع الاسسمنت دوكيمنت. يعني انت بتملك عقار بديربورن بيجيك على البيت بالبريد دوكيمنت بيقول لك انه انت اليوم شو تخمين عندك البيت وقديش الضريبه عليه صارت. في اسبوع اللي جاي في مواعيد من الاثنين للجمعه اذا انت ملاقي حالك والله ضريبتك كتير عاليه انت يعني حاس حالك انك منك بالمحل المناسب فيك تعمل ابيل اي استئناف وهذا اللي سكات رح يحكي عنه هلا من بعد ما نبلش من بعد ما نروح مع حسين على الفيسبوك ونشوف شو في كومنتس وكويستشنز قبل ما نكفي. حسين الك.
أكيد تحياتنا لك أستاذ خضر وتحياتنا للمشاهدين، تحياتنا للأستاذ سام بيدون وللأستاذ سكوت ميلر. ثانك يو لكم لوجودكم معنا اليوم. أكيد تحية لكل المشاهدين اللي عم بيشاركوا معنا من خلال هذا البث المباشر لهذه الحلقة الجديدة من برنامج شؤون الناس. هناك عدد كبير من الأسئلة بدي احاول قد ما فيني اقراهم. يمكن شوي انا يمكن عندي ليميتد عم بستعمل تليفوني. اكيد مازن اطرش عم بيقول ثانك يو سام بايدون فور ذا كايند وورد فور everything you do for the community. رويال سترو بتقول الحمد لله ديربون از ذا بيست. ليمو اكسبرس سين ثانك يو سو ماتش خضر. اسامه السين معقول كل سنه بيزيد التاكس؟ نحن لا بعنا عقار ولا اشترينا بيت جديد، ما هذه العداله؟ يزيدون الضرائب على البيوت الجديده. اذا فيكم تكتبوا الاسئله عنكم بطريقه انه فينا نجاوب العالم على اسئلتها لانه عم بيجي اكثر من سؤال. ايضا عم بيقول زياده التاكس سنويا وكأنك تسحب من طعام أهل البيت. جميل عيسى بيقول أشكركم على هذا البرنامج. في أسئلة كمان تاني بدي أحاول إذا فيني أشوفها من الكمبيوتر تبعي لأنه ما بقدر أشوفها من إذا تسمحوا لي ثانية بس لحتى أشوف هذه الأسئلة. أيضا كان في أسئلة على ما أعتقد من نبيل حسين ظاهر بيقول نحن اشترينا منزل جديد العام الماضي، كتير أصبح التاكس عالي، هو فوق قدرتنا والمنزل قديم والتاكس تضاعف وهيدا في ظلم كتير. نبيل تيبا عم بيقول it's overpriced. What's the extra money goes anyway? Where the extra money goes anyway? حسين جيلان أكيد تحياتنا له عم يشكرنا على هذه الحلقة المهمة والتوبيك المهم. عم بيقول property taxes have been rising and getting out of control. When I scheduled a board review for my taxes, the assessor usually never helps the resident and doesn't consider the evidence given. They're always in the city side and don't want to help the resident. If we can answer that part if possible, sure. Scott. Sure. كوماندر زاك حيدر أكيد بنوجه له تحية من عزية على وفاة الوالد. بيقول what parameters or criteria the assessor use when assessing houses. أيضا سام عم بيسألوك إذا ممكن ترجعوا تذكروا مرة تانية الويب سايت الخاص بأخذ يعني الموعد لياخذوا اللقاح. حيدر عم يسأل إذا ممكن تنزلون الموقع تبع اللقاح حتى العالم تحطه. وليليان عم تسأل الأشخاص اللي تحت ال 65 أمتى رح تفتحوا لهم المجال ياخذوا هيدا اللقاح. أيضا حسن مثل ما شايفين في كمية أسئلة كبيرة و there's a lot of engagement from people trying to ask question. أكيد بتشكركم كل واحد عم بيشارك بهذا البرنامج. ضلوكم اكتبوا أسئلتكم لأنه نحن كل شوي رح ناخذ أسئلتكم. حسن صبرا بيقول Sam we are so proud of you. You're doing excellent job for the community. God bless you and thank you for everything you do. أكيد في كتير تحية كمان من سامي من بلال من نسرين من وفاء. شكرا لكم على هذه المشاركة كتير كبيرة. أنا بدي أرجع لخضر فرحات ولضيوفنا المفوض سام بيدون والأسسور سكوت لحتى يجاوبوكم عن أسئلتكم. أنا أستمر في المتابعة. أكيد لك خضر.
ثانك يو حسين. رح أرجع لك بعد حوالي 10 دقائق لحتى كمان مشاهدين نشكركم. بليز خليكم عم تحطوا أسئلتكم وتعليقاتكم واستفساراتكم. أسئلة جدا مهمة متابعة جدا مهمة، الادفوكسي كمان كتير مهمة. فما فيش سؤال انه ما قالوش معنا او شيء، بليز اي سؤال بيجي على بالكم اسألوه لحتى نحن هون. هلا الويب سايت تبع الفاكسين هو cityofdearborn.org/covid. اوكي. والسؤال الثاني بعتقد حسين سأل عشان انه عم تحت 65. ابتداء من 22 مارس حيبلش الاشخاص ال 50 وما فوق بولاية ميشيغان فين ياخذوا الفاكسين. فتدريجيا يعني القصة عم تنفتح. طيب Scott, we're gonna go to you before we go back to Sam because we finished with Sam before we went to Hussein.
Okay.
Scott, many people asked, well, first before we tap into the people's questions just for a minute,
Okay.
If we just explain to people how the tax rate is being calculated, because a lot of questions, as you has heard from Facebook, asking why this rapid increase every year, and they say that it's not fair, as if you're not you, but I mean just
Sure.
thinking this tax increase is taken away. It's taking away money and efforts and things away from their families and kids.
Sure.
So how is it being
Sure.
calculated, just so people can understand, and why is the rapid increase, especially as somebody said on Facebook too, that they are not dealing with selling or buying houses. They are still the same people. They
Sure.
did not buy a house. They did not sell a house.
Sure.
They did not, they're not earning much more money. And where is the money is going to? So all these questions, if you don't mind.
Okay, well that's a lot. Okay, but I tell you what, that's okay, gentlemen.
Let's take it
I love
step
it.
at a time.
All right. Okay, we'll eat the elephant one bite at a time. Yes, sir.
When it's finished, Sam is going to explain it on the board too.
Great.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yes.
So let's dissect this a little bit
Yeah.
in this camera right here.
Yes.
All right, thanks, sir. So there's a lot of things. I'll try to unpack this. Okay. So when we look at assessments, the process really starts with the equalization department. Okay. So the county will do studies based upon sales activity, and then that gets reviewed by the state. And then once it's been confirmed by the state, then at that point it gets given to the assessor. At that point, local assessor will come in and say, like for instance, in our case, we were directed to give, a little bit more than a 7% increase in residential this year, which
Again,
was
how much?
my direction, a little more than 7%.
Okay,
So we
increase in
can-
the residential.
For residential. So let's just talk about one property class, okay? So they
Okay.
break it down by class, okay? Like residential or commercial or industrial. There's other classes like, that just don't
But
exist.
it's also important, while on that point, Scott, people need to understand the 7% increase is in assessment, not in taxable value. There's a big difference.
Exactly.
So 7% in assessed value.
Yes.
Okay.
And thanks for the clarity on that. I appreciate that. So don't want to alarm anyone, but the increase happens on a SCV because every year what assessors are supposed to do is reflect the market. So SCV follows the market. Now there's another term that Commissioners keeps bringing up, and thank you for doing so, is the taxable value. Okay, so Michigan has what's called Proposal A. Some good and bad parts of it, and I'll talk about the good part right away. It created two new terms. It used to be taxes, because this was passed in 94, came into effect in 95. So since 95, assessments have been handled in this manner in the state of Michigan. The assessed value is still doing what it's always done. It's supposed to follow the market. So if you see 5, 6, 7% increases, that's what the SCV is supposed to do. However, you have another term called CAT value, which is supposed to take where your taxable value is only going up by 5% or the CPI, whichever is less. And typically, our CPI, which is your consumer price index, kind of considered your rate of inflation, if you will. Plenty of debate on that, but for the most part, it's hovering around 2-3%. Okay, since it was created. So what does that mean? That means in a market that's doing really well, like we've been doing overall in the state of Michigan for quite some time, where you see the SCV trending the market, 5, 6, 7% increases, your taxable value is only going up your CPI, maybe 2-3%. And that's typically what's happening for the most part. Last year, and I just wanted to pull up MLS data, I wanted to bring that in because it's nice to bring in independent, third-party data rather than just say, here's what the assessors say. So if you just look at the median price from December of 19, to December of 20 for Dearborn, I mean, MLS indicates 19.2% increase. Okay, so it was pretty strong. Now, again, these are averages, and median is typically the usual seller price that's happening. So it doesn't necessarily reflect and say that every single property went up that percent, but it does give you an indication of what's happening in our market. It's a really strong market. So as an assessor, what we're trying to do is get these assessments in line with the market. And so the SCV is always getting adjusted. Your taxable is really, the most important part, right? That's where you're paying your taxes on. The downside is when you get a transfer of ownership, in other words, when you buy, that taxable value, that gap between your SCV and your taxable, imagine the example I just gave. If you got about a 5% happening every year, let's say 4 or 5 years, and just carry that out, and your CPI is only going up, say, roughly 2%, over a number of years, you're going to see a pretty big gap between your SCV and your taxable. Mm-hmm. In our database, we're about 24% difference right now between our SCV and taxable. If you get a transfer of ownership, that following year, your taxable value comes all the way up to your SCV. And so the majority of the taxpayers that we interact with at the counter or on the phone are those who are asking us, what's happening with our taxes. Because, I mean, that you get pretty sizable increases when your taxable value gets uncapped. And this is the downside of Proposal A. I think it pushes a greater burden on those who are market participants, those who buy and those who build. And it's a downside, but if you stay in your home for quite some time, there's the benefit, and that's what it's designed for.
Okay. Just let me, if you don't mind, translate a little bit before we move
sure,
on to
go
Sam.
Ahead.
If you don't mind. No, I'm just going to give him
sure.
the major thing, and Sam can help also in the
sure.
Arabic language because he's among the experts in this field.
Okay.
And then we're going to move to Sam so he can go and explain on the board.
If I may, I would like,
sure.
Because part of that question did talk about the appeal process. I did want to make sure.
Yes, we'll talk about that, certainly. Yes, we will talk about it because, again, all next week, you have open appointments with the board. So we will certainly touch on that, that's for sure.
Appreciate
so مشان عمود سكات انه الانكريس اي الزياده بالضرائب على العقارات كل سنه هي بتعتمد على حجم المبيعات، يعني قديش في نشاط بالسوق العقاري. كل ما زاد النشاط العقاري من بيع وشراء كل ما هناك عم بيزيد، ولكن سام وسكات بوث اثنيناتهم عم بيقولوا انه في فرق بين الاسست والتاكسبل. يعني عم بيقول سام، اذا فيك تحكيها سام انت بلغتك رد عليك بالعربي يعني.
ايه
الاساس يعني انه التخمين، انه قيمه التخمين مش هي اللي عم تعتمد، اما هن عم بيشرجوكم على الضريبه على التاكسبل فاليو.
هذا الشيء في نقطه كثير مهمه اللي حكى فيها سكات وانا كنت بدي اوضحها، هي قصه البروبوزل اي. البروبوزل اي نجحت بال 1994. قبل ال 1994 يا اخوان يا اخوات بديربون أو بأي city before 1994, before Proposal A, the cities can increase the taxable value and the assessed value as much as they wanted based on the activities. But Proposal A, when it passed in 1994, it was intended to protect homeowners from rising property taxes. دائما أنا بقول اللي قاعد ببيته, people who've been in their home for many years, they benefit from Proposal A because, as I told you earlier, if you look at it this way, if you've lived in your house for 25 years or 30 years, you will see your taxable value down here, and because of this high flying real estate market, you'll see your assessed value up here. There's a gap. When the property is sold, this is where people get in trouble. When the home is sold, in many new homeowners, and I'm sorry to put it this way, they are not told up front what their taxes could be after they buy the house. And that's a problem, and I urge my colleagues, and many of them, they're all professionals, especially in the Dearborn Area Board of Realtors, and a special shout out to all of them. They do explain. Some people don't do it, but most of them, they do. You're supposed to ask as a buyer. إذا أنت عم تشتري بيت أنت بدك تسأل الوسيط العقار بتسأله قديش ممكن إنه التاكسز يطلعوا القيمة تبعهم. When the property gets sold, this is what we call the uncapping. Okay, the ceiling is lifted from the property. So let's say the house is sold now for $200,000, and the house was assessed before for $150,000. Now it gets reassessed at the new value of $200,000, which is half of that would be $100,000. And realistically, if you look at the taxable value and the SEV, it should be at the minimum, it should be around $100,000. A lot of cases, the taxable value and the assessed value, they're a little bit lower than what you paid for the house. If your assessed value after you buy the house, بعد ما تاخذوا البيت تشتروا البيت والassessed value بيطلع أكتر من السعر اللي دفعتوه, you have a strong case to go in front of the board and say, my house is not worth $250,000. I just bought the house and it's worth $200,000, and here's the appraisal. هذا الappraisal, and I'm peeling my property taxes, and that's how I help many people over the years by doing comparable sales to look at the houses, البيوت اللي انباعت بالمنطقة مقارنة بالبيت اللي أخذته أنت, أو بتعمل appraisal. فالassessed value, and I'm going to explain it over here now. The assessed value and taxable value. Let me just get up here, Hassan, and so you can help me out here. I'm using this, Scott, as an example. This is my rental property that I own in Dearborn. I've owned this house since 1991.
Okay.
Now, the assessed value in 2020 on my house was $77,300. The SEV, the state equalized value, went up to $83,300. So you could see how much it increased.
In 1 year, $6,300.
Now, my taxable value, because of what we talked about, the CPI and Proposal A, which limits the city as to how much they can increase your taxable value, it went up by $620. That's the taxable value. It was $44,291. It went up to $44,911. And people will ask, how did they come up with this? This is very important. A lot of people who are watching me now, and they've been in their homes for many years, they're going to see a small increase in their taxable value and a higher increase in the assessed value. This taxable value is determined by what we call the inflation multiplier. For 2021, the inflation multiplier is 1.014.
Yep.
This is the CPI.
The CPI.
So if you take this 1.014 for 2021, you multiply it by the previous year's taxable value, which is the 44,291. That's how we came up with the new taxable value for 2021 of 44,911, which means if I look at this, my property taxes for 2021 will increase by almost $45. This $620 increase in taxable value, it's translated for me an increase in my taxes for $45. However, since this is a non-homestead property, the non-homestead rate in Dearborn in 2021 was 72.9958. If my property was homesteaded, if I lived in that house, which I don't, the 611658 is the homestead rate. Keep one thing in mind, this did go down last year because the bond proposal was defeated. So there was a decrease in the homestead rate. We don't know when the homestead rate is coming out yet. It comes out in July, right, Scott?
In July.
In July, they will have the homestead rate. These are very important factors. Khodr, you mentioned something in one of the questions that came about why the increase in the taxes. People also need to understand, just like other cities, this is happening in other cities, not just Dearborn and Dearborn Heights.
Statewide.
It's happening in Plymouth and all over. It's happening. It's a supply and demand. There's a lot of demand. It's a crazy real estate market. However, other cities, they have much lower millage rate than we do here in Dearborn, and this is where we need to focus on is the millage rate. So the millage rate in the city of Dearborn for homestead is 61.1658. A home in Dearborn that's worth $300,000 will pay X amount of money based on this. If you go to Plymouth and Livonia and other cities, the millage rate is less than this rate. That's why you will see people pay less property tax, and they say, why are we paying more? Now, if we want to get into the millage rate where the money goes in, this is something we should probably cover it a little bit tonight, because you will see that this, all of this money, the 61.1658, this is not the money that goes to the city of Dearborn, all of it. The city gets a portion of the taxes. Just to make it simple math, for every dollar that we pay in property taxes, the city takes in 33.6, and the rest gets distributed. We have the Wayne County, we have Henry Ford Community College in Dearborn, and we have the CSO, the Combined Sewer Overflow. Yeah. We have other things we can go over it. It's there. It's on the back of the calendar for those who have the city calendar. So now, I gave an example of a house that it's been in ownership for many years. Someone buys a house today. If this house was to be sold today, my house, this particular one right now, and it's showing that the assessed value is $83,300. Let's say I sell this house, and I sell this house for double this amount, which is about $166. Now keep one thing in mind. The SEV is $83,300, but look at my taxable value. It's almost 50% of my SEV. Why? Because there's a gap. As I said, this value increases at a much, much lower pace than the assessed value. This goes up at the rate of 5% or the inflation rate, whichever is less. If I sold this house today, next year, the new owner is going to be paying based on this value, which is half of what I sold the property for, and would be substantially higher than what I'm paying right now. Mm-hmm. Now, for a lot of these people that are getting surprised with the higher property taxes right now, if they bought in 2020 in this high flying real estate market, and especially if they purchased a home from someone who has lived in his home for many years, and they had a gap between the taxable value and the state equalized value, they will see what we call the pop-up tax. I have received several messages from clients, and I did explain it to them that this is going to happen, and we have a way of appealing these taxes. And obviously, if you purchased a home for $300,000, and the city is telling you we're assessing you at, let's say, $160,000, and you go in front of the city and I'm making the argument from the board's perspective here. So if you bought something for $300,000 and you're paying taxes based on $260,000, then you have a weak argument, because especially if your home appraised for $300,000. Again, I'm just being objective here, and I'm just pointing out the facts. And if you feel that the house needed a lot of work and you overpaid for the house, you have a strong case to make an argument in front of the board, and they will listen to you. And we didn't mention this, Hassan. If you do not succeed on the city level, and for some reason the board does not agree to lower your assessed value, إذا ما قبلت البلدية تنزل لك الأسست value، فيك تعمل الأبيل الاستئناف للstate of Michigan. There's a form that you apply by July 1st, I believe, right?
Well, it depends. Residential and commercial is different.
Yeah,
different
commercial
deadlines.
is different by May.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can appeal to the state level if you don't succeed on the local level. The problem, there's too many variables here. Proposal A is obviously one problem.
Yeah.
The millage rate that we have here, which is a high millage rate, is another issue. I also would like to point out to all the people that are watching us, next year there's something coming up for renewal, which is the 3.5 mils for city services. I believe that was passed in 2013, correct, Scott?
I believe.
In 2013 it did renew, and there's also another millage rate for library. I think it's coming up. And remember one thing, everything that we have in here, okay, and the millage rate, the majority of this, you know, whatever we have mandated for the county, it's mandated, I think it's 6% for the county. Everything else is voted on by the voters. The city does not come up with these charges arbitrarily. These are proposals that are put on the ballots, and the voters in the city of Dearborn pass these proposals. So it's very important to know that. And you can see there's more of a charge between the higher rate, obviously, between non-homestead and homestead. And by the way, this non-homestead rate, this is the same rate that people that own commercial properties, shopping centers, commercial building, industrial buildings, rental properties. I have rental properties in Dearborn. This is what I pay.
Yep.
Okay, this is for homestead, and this is for non-homestead, and this is for 2020. In 2021, these rates will come out coming up right now. A lot of information I'm bombarding you with, but I just wanted to explain why there's a gap between the homestead and the non-homestead property and the taxes, actually. And it's a very hot real estate market right now, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. And people need to know before you jump in with both feet, if you are buying a house for $500,000 and the current owner is paying $10,000, for example, you need to know what your property taxes are going to be once you buy this home. It's very important to ask the questions.
Thank you, Sam. Just let me translate to minus some of that, and then we're going to go to Sam for the Facebook, and then we're going to come to you, Scott.
Okay.
Sorry for the
Great.
delay.
Oh, no problem. No, this is
Appreciate
great.
Sam for the great presentation. So,
Sam's doing a great job.
Yeah, I know.
I can just
always.
sit back and let him do it.
Yes. سام عم بيقول مشاهدينا الكرام انه طبعا باختصار انه في عوامل عديده لحتى الضريبه عم بتزيد علينا. اول شيء مثل ما قلنا بالبدايه نشاط العقار من مبيعات. ثاني شيء عندنا الميلج، يعني الديون المترتبه على المدينه، بمعنى سندات اللي دينوها ان كان للجامعه ولا المدارس. طبعا بخساره الباند ب 2019 هيدي وطى شويه التاكس ريت. وايضا عم بيقول كمان انه مش كل المصاري اللي بتجي هي عم بتروح كمان للسيتي اوف ديربون، يعني نحن بما انه عايشين بديربون بنحكي عن ديربون، يعني عم بيحكي في 33.6 cents, right, Sam?
33.6 of every dollar we pay goes to the city of Dearborn.
Yes.
And on that point, out of the 33.6 that the city takes in, 75%, 75% من هذا المبلغ بروح للبوليس and fire.
Yes.
It goes for the police and fire, public safety.
Yes. يعني تخيلوا انتم من كل دولار عم يصرف بديربون البلديه بتاخذ منه 33.6 سنتس، و70% من هؤلاء 33.6 سنتس عم بيروحوا للشرطه وللفاير ديبارتمنت كبابليك سيفتي. يعني وعم بقول كمان سام انه كل هودي هن مقترحات نزلوا على لوائح الانتخابات، سو هن الناخبين يلي بينتخبوا اذا بيقبلوا يعني بتنزل هي ولا لا. وعطى مثال انه نكست يير ب 2022 حيكون في هناك اقتراح لتجديد 3.5 مل اللي هو لخدمات المدينه. فكمان الناخب عنده مسؤوليه كبيره انه يدرس هذه الاقتراحات، واذا عم بيصوت ايه على اقتراح يعرف على شو عم بيصوت، واذا عم بيصوت لا كذلك الامر. قبل ما نكفي before we get going with this Scott, I want to go to حسان. إلك يعني تأخرنا عليك شوي بهذه الفقرة، فبس شوف في عندك أسئلة وتعليقات، تفضل.
اكيد يا خضر، ما تسالني قديش في اسئله وتعليقات لانه في كثير صراحه. There's a lot of questions to be honest with you guys. In general, the question I'm gonna read some of them. Jamil is saying, so Dearborn only gets third of what our property taxes, but that's the same amount every other city. If Wayne County gets, so how are they functioning just fine and providing the same services despite having a lower millage rate? I think that's a good question to ask. Also, حسين بيقول الأسلوب في اعتماد التاكس ظالم ولا يعتمد على الموضوعية. دكتور مازن أطرش بيقول 3.5 mil operational and 1 mil library. That's for the millages that's going to come up for renewal
in 2022.
فأكيد هيدا عم يتحدثوا عنهم. مروان عم بيقول the 3.5 mil will not pass. I don't know what he's basing it on, but basically we'll see. Jamil بيقول, what I'm hearing is that if you are an old person who has lived in their home for years, you're in good shape. But if you're a young person looking to buy a home, be prepared for a crazy tax bill. Vote no on every millage, no matter what it is. So it's basically pushing people to vote no on anything that's going to come up. And that's what happened with the schools last year. Mazen is saying limitation from proposal A and the high millage are exactly why we need creative solution. If we cannot reverse proposal A, we need an alternative. Also عم بيقول في comment تاني, what if there are no comparable sales? How are assessments then performed without arbitrary? Seems this is an ambitious point where there are no comparable sales, and that allows for more aggressive subjective assessments. Hussein is saying Dearborn has the highest rate for property taxes in Michigan. I have a 1,200 square feet without a finished basement. Needs a lot of updates, and the taxes are 5,000, which is incredible. People started to move out of Dearborn due to high property tax. They're talking about Livonia being 15 minutes away from us. They have beautiful houses and they have a lower taxes than us. They need to know why. For some reason. And there's another question about someone have, you know, his neighbor, and he has double the size of his house and he pays the same amount of tax as him.
Okay.
Why is that? So في كتير أسئلة عم تجي وأنا معكم صراحة. هناك عدد كبير من الأسئلة. الضرائب في مدينة ديربون. يعني أنا هلا كنت قبل ما يا ريت الورقة حدي كنت فرجيتكم عليها, كنت عم فرجي الأسسور إنه أنا التاكس تبع بيتي اشتريت بيت هيدي السنة, بسنة وحدة طلع التاكس تبع بيتي $1,172. ضربة وحدة. فاهمين كيف؟ وما فهمانين ليش السبب. رح ارجع لك استاذ خضر, انا رح ضليني عم تابع الاسئله, عم نحاول قد ما فينا نوصل صوتكم للمسؤولين. هوفلي فينا نشرح اكثر. هلا يمكن شوي كنا عم نشرح الفورمولا اللي كيف بتنعمل, بس اذا فينا نجاوب على الاسئله اكثر بطريقه واضحه. انه ليش انا بيتي عم يطلع التاكس كل سنه مع انه ما زبطت في شيء, ما غيرت في شيء, ما عملت ريموديلينج, ما عملت شيء, ليش عم يطلعوا لي التاكس تبع بيتي؟ ليش جاري بيدفع اكثر مني او بيدفع اقل مني او بيته اكبر مني على مرتين عم يدفع قد مني؟ ليش الاسسمنت عم بيكونوا اجريسيف, ما عم بيكونوا ما عم بينعطى تاكس بريك للعالم؟ يعني روقوا علينا شوي بالاسسمنت خصوصا ضمن جائحه كورونا. فبرجع لكم استاذ سام خضر واسكت.
استاذ حسين, بتشكر كل المشاهدين على اسئلتهم وتعليقاتهم, واكيد يشكر كل السبونسرز. رح نحكي عن هالمواضيع قبل ما نطلع على بريك مع حسين. بتشكر برجع اي بي لايتنج اند سبلايز, مانجوز, تهامس, ليمو اكسبرس, مالتي ميديا ستيشن, وايضا طبعا بلاجيو هول اند بانكويت سنتر. بتشكركم كلياتكم على دعمكم ووثائقكم بالبرنامج وبواتساب ميديا. Scott, before we go to the break, if you don't mind, just briefly, because as you saw, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
Yeah. So please briefly, and then at the end we're going to touch on the appeal. Just as a conclusion, like, okay, if you're not happy, if you're not satisfied, if you have a doubt, you can, approach the Board of Appeal and, go on here or call that number to make an appointment. But people Sam explained what is the formula and the reasons why we as City of Dearborn have higher taxes, but people are not I feel like they have a sense of doubt, like they're not convinced. They keep looking at other cities.
I understand.
Although they have lower millage rates, but nonetheless, Hassan asked a question from one of the Facebook audience. Said two neighbors. One neighbor had a double lot house, and then versus the other one has a regular house.
Sure.
Yet they both pay the same amount. So so they feel that it's not just.
So a lot of great questions, and there's a lot of things to dissect in this. So I'll just try to give a couple of broad answers right here. When we talk about the assessments here for Dearborn, for instance, let's just talk about, one of them was about, I want to address this. I hear that Dearborn seems to be aggressive, okay? In front of me, and this is from an equalization study, anybody can go right on the Wayne County's equalization department and pull up a study. And they'll show you a history of every community within Wayne County, which is 43 communities, from 2007 to current. And I just kind of put it together in a spreadsheet to show everyone. 2007 was, prior to our Great Recession, basically the big decline we had. So when you look at where we were as a county, overall, we've only bounced back about 90% of that. We're still down 10% from our 2007 numbers.
Yeah, that's a fact. That is a fact.
We are, and numbers are right there for the county. They're on the website, and I've got it in an Excel sheet. If anyone ever wants to see it, I'd be more than happy to forward it to anyone who would just ask me, shoot an email to me, I'll forward it to you. But something important to look at is this. When you compare Dearborn to the entire Wayne County, all 43 communities. So Wayne County, if you just look, I just made a note here. Wayne County overall has bounced back on their SEVs about 87%. That's Wayne
true.
County. Dearborn's at 86%. So we're actually 1% below overall Wayne County, right? So we're not being really more aggressive when you compare it. We're being consistent with what's happening.
I'm sorry, but then what? But then what do you tell somebody like Hassan who bought a house and only in 1 year he got $1,200 increase immediately?
So now here is the downside, and I tell you what, Proposal A again will uncap your property. Okay, so what it does is it creates this huge inequality. It can create an inequality in your taxes. For instance, I want to share an example with you. If we were to drive down the street and we had a group of houses that were all the same, okay, let's say they're all worth $200,000, right? So your SEV should be at $100,000, okay? Because in Michigan, our SEVs are to be based upon 50% of market value, okay? Now, I just want to touch one quick note on that for everyone. Market value, the definition of that from the state is the usual selling price, okay? So one sale doesn't constitute a market. We got to look at what's actually happening overall. We just had a case last week with a gentleman who paid, considerably more than what we've been able to find from most activity. So we didn't use his sale price for the assessment.
You don't chase values.
We don't chase values.
That's very important to know. يعني البلدية ما بتلاحق القيمة الشرائية اللي بندفعها. يعني أوقات مثلا إذا اشتريت بيت ب 300,000 بص 300,000 150 مش معناتها إنه خلاص automatically البلدية راح تحط لك إياها على 150. بيطلعوا they look at the comparable sales in the area. So sometimes, even though half of the 300,000 is 150, the city might come back and assess it at 110 or 115 because that's all they can find. Because of the shortage in supply, people are overbidding these homes. It's crazy. I have a home in Dearborn right now. There's 75 showings on it in 3 days, and we already have 7 offers.
How about when there is no comparable sales?
Okay, well, let's go to that one then. There's hardly ever a point when you say there's no comparables, and there always is. Sometimes you may have to go to broaden your market, okay, go a little wider. That's true, but there's other tools you can do that, for instance, appraisers quite often use like regression analysis. For instance, that's a real nice tool. When you have limited sales activity, how that works is you throw in, like, basically use an Excel sheet and do some charts. And you can trend what is actually happening in the market and what would be an indicated value if, say, a very large property were to sell, but you didn't have, let's say you only had a few sales, but I have quite a few 4,000 or 5,000 square foot, but maybe I only got a few 7,000, 8,000 square feet homes, right? So you can trend it rather than just say looking at just one sale or 2 sales. You can trend it. So regression analysis is a great tool. It's something we actually implemented this year on our larger homes because we do have a limited sales activity. We still have sales, so it's not a standalone analysis, but it's a great tool when you do have limited sales. So it's something we implemented this year and actually ended up reducing quite a few large homes within the city this year, even though many other properties went up. So there's always a method. There's always a method that is reasonable and supported within the market. Now, I just want to share one other thought too, if I could. The whole process in assessing is based off of sales activity. So it's not an arbitrary analysis. It goes through the county, it goes through the state, and then it goes through the local assessor. And when we're done, and it's what happens next week, right? So I've done my part. So I went through the county, it's went through the state, it's went through the local assessor. They gave me the numbers and I spread them based upon where I saw strengths, where I saw growth, and I saw, some markets were a little stronger than others. At this point, the next step is we hand it to the March Board Review. Now, they have total freedom. They can do what they want within reason, within the market, right?
Yeah.
And then let's say you get a decision from the March Board Review, and let's say you're not comfortable with that. As Commissioner mentioned, there's additional step you can take, which is go to the Michigan Tax Tribunal.
Tax tribunal.
Now, if you have a PRE on that, which is a principal residence exemption, I know we use the term homestead. Homestead's probably, that's the word everyone's comfortable
Yes.
with. Yeah, the state, when we all got comfortable with homestead, the state came in and changed the name to principal residence exemption. They like to do that. So it's the same thing. If you hear me say PRE or homestead, they're the same thing. So let's say you get your decision from the Board of Review and you're not comfortable with that, you can go to the tribunal, and it's free if you got a PRE. If not, it's a pretty minimal cost if it's
Yes,
residential.
if it's non-homestead, if it's
Yeah.
an investment property.
Yeah.
So just so we can take that, since you opened up this topic, and Hassan, we're not going to go for the break, just so we can use every
I'm sorry, I'm
second.
killing
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Not at all.
I
Just
can explain one thing خضر اذا
Yes.
تسمح لي سام اذا فينا نشرح للعالم لانه عم يسالوا في عالم منا عارفه انه البيوت المؤجره اوريدي بتدفع تاكس اكثر من البيوت مش البيوت
Yeah.
عايشين انتم فيها. اشرح لي هذه النقطه لانه في عالم مثل اسامه عم بيقول ليش ما بيدفعوا البيوت المؤجره اكثر من البيوت اللي انتم عايشين فيها. هيدا اللي بيصير مش هيك؟
انا
تفضل.
شرحت هون اللي عنده rental property. انا عندي rental properties بديربون. I pay more taxes on the rental properties because I don't occupy them, they're rented. And by the way,
لما بتقولوا انتم هومستيد انت
homestead is
عايش
principal residence. Non-homestead is rental.
Exactly.
Is rental.
So just so people know لانه
Yeah.
But also you need to understand one thing too. There's something very important, people don't know this, and Scott will elaborate on this.
Okay.
The additional money that you pay, the difference between homestead and non-homestead, do you know where this money goes? It goes to the schools.
كمان هذا
Yes.
Okay.
The extra money that we pay for non-homestead,
Did we vote on that or that's just basically how the
Proposal
formula is?
that's proposal A.
كمان proposal A.
Yeah. The money goes to the money goes to the money goes to the schools.
Yeah, the money goes to the state and they allocate it out. That was the change. It used to be to local communities. So then it shifted from Prop A, now the money goes to the state and they divvy it out per student. And it's similar. It's the same rate per student. So, it's a lot more fair. It's a lot more consistent. Wherever you're at in Michigan, you get that. If you want more money per student, then you can get supplemental millage like we have here, where if you decide you want to up your schools, kind of up the income, so you can get some additional services and benefits to your students.
Okay.
Communities have that freedom to do that.
There's a couple important questions I need to ask you guys,
Sure.
and I give it back to you, Sam. One first question: we are in a COVID-19 era where people are having a hard time
Yes.
to get money and to pay for things.
Sure.
So many of the comments here: why the government doesn't give people a break on property taxes? I mean, especially that we're living in a pandemic right now.
Well,
that's the first one. You
Okay,
wanna
on
answer?
to that point, there has been, for example, there was a grant through the city of Dearborn which came from the CARES Act money for people who were behind on their rent, for people who are behind on their utilities, for people who are behind on their property taxes. About a month ago or less, I had a virtual town hall with the Wayne County Treasurer, Eric Sabri.
Yeah.
And the county works with people, they put them on a payment plan. We're talking about 2017, 2018, 2019. Now we're talking about, we're into March right now, March 1st, the taxes for 2017. If you didn't pay your taxes for 2017, if you own your house free and clear, you don't have a mortgage, you didn't pay your taxes for 2017, I urge you and I ask you to call the Wayne County Treasurer, 224-5990, make arrangements with the Wayne County Treasurer to pay your 2017 and 2018 property taxes. Even if it's $100 a month, the county will work with you. The last thing they want is to take your property. It's very important for people to know that, okay?
نقطة كتير مهمة هذه سام. بعتقد كمان الحاج إيريك كنت عم بحكي معه أنا، قال لي إنه كان في رولينج بالمحكمة اللي خسر بيته بالفوركلوجر.
Yeah, I mean that's another. No, I can talk about
بس
that
بدي
briefly.
احكي عن موضوع تاني سام، كونكم بدكم تحكوا هلا. واجا سؤال كتير مهم من في صراحة، في نمر. Since you guys gonna talk about appealing in the next section, Faye is saying, and I think that's a very important thing. I think that's happening with people. She's saying, personally, I received my property tax assessment this past Monday, and the deadline to appeal is next Friday. Why is it too quick? Why the window is too short, to be honest with you? That's my first question.
Sure.
Further, in calling the assessor's office, it became clear I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll to that all appeal appointments have been booked.
Okay, stay on that point.
Okay.
Stay on that point. It's a very important question.
I know it's very, that's why I'm asking.
Not true, but go ahead.
But a very important question.
Go ahead.
If you received, for some reason, you received it late. I received mine.
She's saying the mail is being late.
Okay,
so
it's possible. And Faye, what I will do, what I will advise Faye is this. It's very simple. If you cannot get an appointment, and because of the COVID environment that we are in, you cannot you can walk in because they do take walk-in appointments.
Yes.
Here's what I would advise people to do. I advise people to do this.
Please tell people. This is
make a copy of your assessment, tax assessment. Write a letter. I, the undersigned so-and-so, hereby don't agree with the assessment on my property for 2021 for the following reason. My home is not worth this amount of money, and attached you will find the comparable sales that I gather from my realtor, or here's a copy of the appraisal. Put it in the mail and mail it to the city of Dearborn. What you have done, you put this on record with the city of Dearborn.
Yep.
You will receive a letter after that in the mail that we have received your appeal and we received your documents.
Okay.
And this is what we found. We will either lower your assessed value or we will keep it the same. Once you keep it the same, you have a letter. Now you fill out the form and send it to the state for the board and on the state level.
Okay.
So for people who cannot get an appointment, write a simple letter, attach whatever proof you have, and send it by mail to the city of Dearborn.
You cannot go to the city because even Ashraf Yahya is saying the appeal is all booked. What should we do?
Okay, so great question. Thanks for bringing that up. So if you look at the surrounding communities, they only do about 3 days, right? So we do 5. Right now, we just added on a 6th day. So we're double most communities right now.
You added another day?
We added
Which
another
day
day,
is that?
which is the 17th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the 17th,
Yeah, so 1, 2,
okay?
3, 4. It
But
was
we are
5. It
excluding
was
lunch.
5, yeah.
Yeah, so we're
اشرح لي
excluding
اياها
lunch.
بالعربي
for the
سام.
one.
I'm just asking Sam.
Okay, so-
when you're done, Scott.
Sure.
Go ahead, Scott. If you want to finish and then Sam will say.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so here's the thing. You can either schedule an appointment, okay, if you can get in, that's great, then you have an appointment, then you will get preference when you show up.
Okay.
We'll be ready, we'll be waiting, that way we can be efficient with your time. If we're booked, you can just walk in. You can be a
So
walk-in.
go to the city building and
You just
then
show up the building
Okay.
Yes.
during the board review session, the hours when they are there. If anyone's not sure, they can look on the city's website, or they can call us and say, hey, when is the board in session? We'll
the
be more than
number?
happy to tell them. So,
943-2140. That's
Thank
the
you.
number.
Let me write it down.
313-943-2140.
Give it to me 1 second.
313
Okay.
943
Okay.
2140. I only call it about 10-15 times a day.
What is that for?
That's
The,
for the
Assessor's office.
assessor's office.
yeah, in that, you can get the hours and see if there's still appointments available. And if not, you can always do a walk-in, right?
Well, on your notice, the one
Go
that
ahead.
you have in front of you, Hussein,
Hey.
on your notice on the bottom,
Hey,
you see the assessment?
let me see. Hey.
Okay, it says March 8th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. They break for lunch. On March 9th, from 2 to 6, there's nothing going on in the morning.
لك وين اني مارش
Yeah,
8 مارش
you see?
خلينا نحط بعض مرة
Right,
بالورقة.
right.
So those were
Right in the middle
5
of the
days,
session
and they added March 17
We just added that today.
from 10.
I have the document. I'm going to
10
show it on the
10 to
screen.
noon, and then 1 to 3 again.
So they added another day, Hussein,
Yeah, خليني
basically.
فرجيني
Now-
on the screen. It's on the
now-
screen right now.
Now,
Yeah.
now, let me share this too.
Go ahead.
If, let's say, none of those days work for you, you can do a written appeal.
That's the
which
one
is
that we just
exactly
done.
what
Yeah.
Commissioner just expressed, and he laid it out perfectly.
Okay.
I just want to share this with people. The board review focuses on the market value of the property, right? So take your assessment. If it says $100,000, what the assessor is saying is it's worth $200,000 in a market value, right? So the usual selling price, example I gave earlier. If you feel that's out of line with the market, then by all means, you can schedule an appointment, you can do a walk-in, or you can do a written appeal, okay? Now, here's the important thing. If you're a residential property, you come to the board review, and you didn't like your decision, and you want to go to the tax tribunal, you have to come,
to the city first.
You have to come to the Board Review first. That is constitutional, and we cannot change that, okay? Now, if you are not a residential property, you can go directly to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. You don't have to come to the Board Review. You can appeal directly. Here's the advantage. Anyone's curious what the advantage is? The Board Review is free. Okay, tribunal's not. Now it's free though, the tribunal, if you have that principal residence exemption or homestead, what the state got us all comfortable with calling it. Cool. So that is something, and I just want to share a thought with everyone on the March Board Review and the tax tribunals. We just completed a 5-year study, and the Board of Review, I tell you what guys, we really have a great Board of Review here. There's 4 members, so typically you have to have 3 for a quorum. We have 1 backup. Out of them 4 members, 2 of them are commercial appraisers. One's a certified residential appraiser, and the other one's a retired clerk. It's a very informed board. So I think they do a great job when you look at their work. And overall, we've had about 1% of our properties get appealed. Okay, about 1% in the last 4 or 5 years. So the 5-year study. And the adjustments have been roughly about 1%. Then for those individuals who weren't comfortable with the board's decision and they decided to go to the tribunal, now that is, again, another independent third-party viewer looking at our assessments. And that is roughly about, you've been seeing adjustments about maybe only 0.5% of our assessments. Okay. So we're pretty consistent with the market, and I think we're getting a lot of confirmation. So I'm feeling pretty good about the work.
Sam, please translate, as if you don't mind.
So my apologies.
I want to do that.
Going on.
Go ahead, Khodr.
Okay, let me translate. Unless you want to do it, go
No,
ahead.
go
We
ahead.
really want people to know how to appeal, how to do it. This is very important, especially people who are worried about the booking, about the timing, and they're asking you why not extend it to 10 days if possible.
Sure.
I don't know if that's if that's in your hand, on whose hand to extend those days.
Scott, thank you again. Just let me try and
Who's responsible for extending days? And I'm sorry, I'm asking too many questions, but I'm really passionate about that topic.
Oh, sure.
And believe me, I'm getting so many text messages. Please.
So there, and I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem.
That's the executive branch, not the executive branch.
No worries.
Well, we can extend it, but I mean, it's really only if the demand is there.
Who would be responsible for that, though? Is it the city council, the mayor office?
Or is the assessor?
Well, I have to get approval for that. Okay, I
From
can't
who?
just. For one, I had to get access to chambers. I had to get access to. I have to get a place. I have to get the board to show up. The board is independent. Again, guys, they're not city employees.
They're volunteers.
They're volunteers. They don't even get paid. Okay. And again, we're up to 6 days right now, which is twice. And if any of the communities, I know a lot of people like to talk about the services they get. You know, Canton, 3 days. Southfield, 3 days. These communities do 2-3 days at the board. We do 5 or 6. And here's the thing. All you have to do is get your data in. If the board review is in session, okay, we don't shut anybody out. Nobody gets shut out. We'll stay until everyone gets heard.
Exactly.
We want everyone to have the right to use your constitutional right to appeal your assessments. So we're going to be there. This board is, I tell you what, they do a great job. They will stay there all night, and I just keep buying them food, and they hang around, and they'll work all night. They're really, you guys really have a great board.
I mean, since Scott, since you know the city, for example, with the water bills, because of the mail issue, they had to extend the deadline for people to pay their water. Why not the same for assessment and appealing assessment? Why not extending the deadline? Since, I mean, there is a mail issue.
So there is a date that I have to get this assessment roll over to the county.
What's the deadline?
So it's in April.
Yes.
And I can't extend this forever. We just can't keep it indefinite because remember, the council and administration, everyone's got to use this money as to estimate their budget, right? And so there's got to be a deadline. It just has to be. And moving it forward doesn't mean that anyone loses their right to appeal. It may move now to the tribunal, right? And so again, if people cannot make it, a written appeal, you can mail it in, you can do FedEx, you can use UPS, you can drop it off in the gray mailbox in our parking lot. just put it in the envelope and write assessors.
Yeah, you have to
And
address
that'll
it to
work.
the assessor's
Yeah, put
office.
assessors that float around in the building, but they're pretty good at getting it to us real quick. But that'll get it to us immediately if you just write assessors on it.
If we can translate please.
So go ahead,
we
my
can be fair.
apologies.
No worries.
So much.
No worries. سكوت عم بيقول انه اي حدا بيحب يستأنف اول شيء في هناك كذا ديدلاين، يعني هناك في كذا مواعيد بده الاوفيس تاعوله يلتزم فيها، وكذلك بدلية ديربون لانه بده يعطوا المعلومات للمحافظة ومن ثم بتنتقل للولاية. اول شيء اذا حدا مثلا مش معاجبه الضريبة اللي اشترى بيته او العقار تاعوله، في اول شيء كذا شغله. اول شيء اذا انت كان عندك بيت يعني منزل تسكن فيه بدك تمرق عبر المجلس تبع الاستئناف بالمدينة قبل ما تروح على مستوى الولاية. اما اذا انت عندك بزنس منك بيت يعني ففيك تروح على الولاية مباشرة، ولكن الفرق تبع الولاية فيه بدك تدفع مصاري، اما تبع المدينة هو ببلاش. سكوت نوه بشغله انه هذا البورد هو مؤلف من اعضاء متطوعين ولكن ذو خبرة، عندهم خبرة بهذا المجال، وهن رح يجتمعوا بمدينة ديربون من الاثنين هذا اللي جاي 8 الشهر والثلاثة 4 5 جمعة، وايضا عطوا يوم السادس ب 17 مارس كمان. في معلومات على الويب سايت تبع البلدية، فيكم تتلفنوا على 313-943-2140 حتى تاخذوا معلومات بكونية. هلا عم بقول سكوت اذا واحد بده ياخذ ابوينتمنت بده ياخذ موعد وفرضا لكم ما عادش في مواعيد، عم بقول سكوت طالما هذا المجلس مجتمع او ملتئم بهول الايام بين 8 و12 ومن ثم على 17 فيكم تجوا شخصيا تجيبوا معكم الاوراق، والله تقولوا ليش انتم مش موافقين، ليه عندكم اعتراض، وهن بيتقبلوا يعني هن حيستقبلوا كل العالم. اذا واحد اجى مش حيصعبوا طالما هن موجودين. وايضا فيك تبعت الاستئناف خطيا، فيك تكتب رساله تمضي عليها اسمك وتعطي مثلا المقارنه انه انت والله ضريبتك 7000 والجيران اللي حواليك بالحي او بالمنطقه مثلا 4000، ليش انت 7000؟ فيك تعطي الاوراق والرساله او تحط دروب بالميل بوكس اللي حاطينه بالموقف تبع البلديه، بدك تكتب عليه انه هذا موجه للاسسورز اوفيس، يعني بدنا نحدد يكون كثير دقيقين بالتحديد، او فيك تبعته بالبريد، او يعني فيك مثل ما قلنا قبل انك تجي على مبنى البلديه وقت ما يكون مجتمعين. هلا عم بيقول انه ما فينا نضلنا نمدد، يعني عم بيقول انه بكل المناطق اللي حوالينا 3/4 بس في يومين او 3 ايام مثل كانتون مثل ساوثفيلد، اما السيتي اوف ديربون عم يجتمعوا 5 ايام و6 ايام، يعني اي ضعف ما المدن الثانيه عم يعقدوا هيك جلسات. طيب
خضر في سؤالين كتير مهمين ضمن نطاق الموضوع، بعطيك اياها حسان اذا بتسمح لي. ام سوري بدك تحكي قبل ما انا اسال؟
في شغله كثير مهمه حسين.
سوري انا
if you can put this back up on the screen.
هيدي اللي انت معك اياها
هيدي الاسسمنت.
اعطيني ثانيه بس.
Okay, it's very important and a lot of times people overlook this. ما بينتبهوا لها.
يلا الثانيه بتصير على سكرين.
Let me know when it's on the screen.
It's on the screen right now. Go ahead.
When you see under the property parcel identification in the box where it says principal residence exemption, exempt as homestead principal residence, Hussein, on your assessment, because you live in the house, it should say 100%. Or those people that occupy their homes, it should say 1%.
Good point. Thank you for bringing that
on mine here, the one that I have, because it's a rental property again,
it says 100%.
it's 0%. Okay. Now, there are many homeowners who buy their homes, and for some ungodly reason, they don't file the principal residence affidavit with the city of Dearborn. The city does not know if they live in the house or it's a rental property.
بس تخلص منها ترجمة هيدي سام.
بالعربي في ناس بيشتروا البيت وما بيحطوا انه هني ساكنين فيه.
في فورم لازم يعبوه
في فورم انه انا ساكن بالبيت. اتصلت في وحده من الاخوات على الساوث اند اوف ديربون، من وجهها لها تحيه، قالت لي سام انا عم بدفع كثير تاكس على بيتي. قلت لها اعطيني العنوان، اعطتني العنوان، طلعت ساكنه بالبيت بس حاطينه زيرو هومستيد. قلت لها ليش حاطينه انتو زيرو هومستيد؟ قالت لي انا ما بعرف، ما حدا قالني. So for the last 4 years باخر 4 سنين عم تدفع تاكس على نون هومستيد هاوس وهي ساكنه فيه. هلا عبينا لها الاوراق بالبلديه، طلبنا ان يساعدوها، بيرجعوا لها الديفرنس عن 3 سنين. فكتير مهم يا اخوان يا اخوات اللي عنده بيت وساكن فيه، طلعوا ميك شور انه محطوط مسجل بالبلديه 100% هومستيد. اللي عنده two family houses عادة it's 50% homestead مثل حسين 50%. On that note, from my experience in the past, and we have the assessor here, if it's 50% and you occupy the whole house,
We do occupy the whole house.
if you occupy the whole house, what they used to require before, you have to turn it into a single family house. You have to remove the kitchen upstairs and combine the electrical into one unit.
Okay.
And then they can consider it a single family.
Is it the same formula still?
I believe it is. And then I think there's somebody in his office, since Scott has been there for 1 year, you can talk to Dawn and she can explain that to you. But it's very important to note what the percentage of the homestead. It's on your assessment there. Having 6 days, I think it's enough time, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah.
You can walk in. As long, even if it's 1 a.m. after midnight and you're still there, they're not going to kick you out.
We're not kicking anybody out.
They will hear your appeal. You cannot, Hassan, ما فينا يا إخواني يا أخوات إن نقول we pay too much taxes and we don't do nothing about it. You have to take the first step. If you feel that you're paying too much taxes, okay, go appeal your assessment. عملوا عملية استئناف البلدية وقدموا الطلب، وإذا ما نجحتوا بتطلعوا فيها على النكست ليفل وهي على الستيت ليفل.
تمام.
على الستيت
في
ليفل.
سؤالين مهمين لانه عم بيقولوا لي ما عم بسال الاسئله، بعتذر منك قدر يمكن كثير.
تفضل يلا.
بس لانه عم بيقولوا لي ما عم تسال الاسئله يا حسين، وانا والله يعني قد ما فيني عم بسال اسئله. دكتور مازن عم بيقول there's two questions kind of similar.
Okay.
One question is saying we received many comments. This is an advocacy group, so they receive complaints from people.
Dearborn Dearborn Advocacy Council. Yeah.
We receive many comments and people are afraid to appeal because they worry that the city will retaliate and increase their taxes. Can your guest please explain that this is not true? I think this is an important message for people to know, like, because we have this mentality that people think if we do, we cannot challenge the government. We cannot challenge power.
Let me say this, and I'm going to answer this in English and in Arabic. I will be the first one to stand up in front of the city and say, what you're doing is illegal. You cannot retaliate against homeowners just because they are practicing their right to appeal their property taxes. ما في حدا يقول لك لا او انه يجوا ينتقموا منكم لانه انتم عم تعملوا استئناف للproperty taxes. No, this is a legal right that everyone has, and we all have these rights, and it's your right, and nobody can take that away from you.
I have two.
May I respond?
Please.
Yes.
I just want to add a point. People, we should all be aware that the tribunal does have the right to increase assessments, and they do exercise that right now. They just actually added that in probably about 4 years ago. So they can make an independent decision, and they oftentimes do it.
Okay.
So just a heads up, and I think
I haven't seen
it doesn't
that,
happen
Scott.
that often.
I have not seen
but
that.
I've seen it. In fact, we just had a recent case on that here in Dearborn. But yeah, I saw it in Detroit several times.
There is a question also, Scott, about why first Khalil Osman, he's running for city council. Best of luck for you, Khalil. He's asking what's the success rate at the board of review and what's the success rate at the tribunal. Also, there's a question about can the assessor explain why is the rate of success at the MTT much higher than that at the level of the board of review? Does that mean there is a flaw at the board of review or even at the level of the assessment? That's a question also.
Okay.
And then Faye is asking, and I think that's a very important question to be honest with you. As you can notice, a lot of people are asking for translation.
Sure.
Does the Board of Appeals provide an Arabic interpreter for residents who don't speak English and want to exercise their appeal right? A lot of questions for you guys. Go ahead.
Oh, you're coming at me fast, guys. That's okay. I like it.
Can I talk about the question of the
Scott, you guys decide.
the one when talking about translation?
Yes, sir.
I have done this for the last 25 years. When I go with my clients, with my friends, I act on their behalf in front of the board, and I do translate for them.
Yeah.
Anybody that does not speak English can take a family member to translate for them. أي واحد.
But should it be appointed? I mean, should it be hire somebody given the high population of Arabic speakers? يعني عشان احنا كمية كبيرة انه انت عم بتروح معهم اذا فاضي مثلا او اذا بتقدر. طب انه اذا حدا مثلا ما عنده او ما بيعرفك او مش لازم انه عندنا كتير عرب مش يكون
I believe one of the board members right now is an Arab American. He's
Yes,
an
sir.
appraiser. Jamal Saad.
Yeah.
Jamal Saad, بوجه له تحية له. He's a
تحية.
great man. He sits on the board. He's an Arab
Who
American.
hires the board, by the way?
It comes from the administration,
From
the
I
mayor?
believe.
they get
Yeah,
appointed.
so the administration gets to appoint one individual, right?
Okay.
The council gets to appoint another. And I
The
believe it's
assessor.
no, I don't
No.
get the point. They don't want us doing anything.
No, okay.
The third one is the finance.
The finance
yeah,
department.
department.
So there's three of them.
Yeah, and then we have a backup. We have a backup because what we need to have by law is at least 2 people for a quorum. Okay, so if you show up and you see only 2, don't panic. We're still meeting the state requirements. 3 is ideal. It eliminates a tiebreaker, right? And that's the process, really. And I just wanted to. Okay, I jump in on
Please, go ahead.
the success rate, the
Yes.
question about the
Yes,
success rate
please,
from
we
the
need to answer
board
those
to the
questions.
MDT. So when it's interesting, good timing, we actually just finished a 5-year analysis on the changes that we saw come out of the board review compared to the changes of what we saw of the MTT. So we do not see a significant increase in assessments from the tribunal. Actually, they were actually a little bit less even. But here's the thing. I just want to share a thought with you guys. So and this is important when you come to the board review. So please keep in mind, we're trying to get through 6 people in 1 hour. That gives you 10 minutes. So the board is trying to make a decision in a very short amount of time. So the way to ensure that you are being heard and getting your assessment in line with the market is that you could it goes a long way in helping them if you do, as Commissioner has brought up, if you can bring up some comps, some data, and be concise and right to the point about here's my assessment, take it times 2, it indicates X amount of value, and I don't think that's in line with the market, and here are some comps. And that'll help them get through the process far quicker, and that is where you get greater success. A lot of times we hear people come in and express like, my taxes are too high, why did I get the big increase? And then we end up explaining the 10 minutes, we end up explaining what happened as far as the uncapping, as opposed to their property being in line or not in line. So they get a very short window of time. When you go to the tribunal, you get all the time you need, really, because now both sides get to generate, if you wish, an independent appraisal. We do that on our side. And now, just so everyone knows, this year, well, we weren't able to get it going until towards the end of the year, but we've set up a contract now with several appraisal firms so that when anyone has an appeal, we're just going to try to channel as much of these appraisals as we can, so as many of these MTTs, right out to an independent third-party appraiser, and then present that in front of the tribunal, which again is another independent party. So that way, if there's any concern about us, that we're putting in front of people that we think, it's as objective as we can possibly get it. And so think about the tribunal process. If the petitioner gets an appraisal, right? So someone it's not 10 minutes. Someone actually, takes time to write a narrative appraisal. And then we do the same. I mean, you got a lot more time to really dissect the value of that property. And that's, as an appraiser, that's huge. It's really hard a lot of times to make a quick decision in 10 minutes. So what we do, and I just want to share one additional thought on this, I don't mean to be wordy on this, but last year, we had far more adjustment last year at the board review than the previous 4 years, okay? We had about a half to say, maybe 0.75% for 4 years in a row. Last year, we hit more than 1.2% change just out of the board review. And that was for a couple of reasons. The addition of one of our board members who'd be a residential appraiser, that was great. Jamal is just wonderful. We have him on the board. Plus, he does speak Arabic, which really helps us. We have one of our staff members also.
Layla.
So and we have plenty of translators within the city, so we pull them in as we need. So having residential appraisal really helps. But additionally, I, and as well as others in my department, I directed them to do what we can to generate as many comps, as many analysis as we can to try to, channel them to the board. Now, the board gets to make their own decision. The only thing we can do is try to help them, and we just kind of switch our role from assessor to just trying to help these guys. We just run really multiple listing services, and we let them make the decision. We don't try to say, here's the high ones, here's the low ones, here's all of them.
Okay.
You guys pick it. So that's the process, what's going on.
Scott,
That's why we get more activity.
there's a huge demand, and I can see it from people on the comments.
Sure.
I mean, we live in Dearborn.
Sure.
Half of the city now is the population is Arab Americans right
Sure.
now. So there's a huge demand for Arabic, for someone to be impartial. That's there.
Sure.
Whose responsibility to hire someone to translate to people? It's not the responsibility to bring someone or for Sam to volunteer or
Yeah.
somebody else. And they're saying Jamal's Arabic, it's not that great. I'm just basically relaying what people are saying.
Well,
So-
I would know, I'm sorry.
Who would basically take the responsibility to hire someone officially that's impartial, which is very important, and I think that's
Sure.
within the Accessibility Act. I mean, that's within the law that you have to provide to
Accommodations.
people.
Sure. There's several ways to approach this, and what we've decided to do it, and I've been speaking with the commissioner, we haven't been able to wrap this up, and it's all my fault at this point, but what we're trying to do right now, we have 3 different documents we're working on, like short little 2-page, explanations, your assessment, breakdown, what it means, how to handle appeals from the Board of Review as well as the tribunal, and then a third one on how to estimate your taxes. We are close to having these documents done. We'll have them done tomorrow, but we want to get them translated into Arabic as well. I mean, yeah, we want to represent the people, we want to give everybody a fair shot, and we understand at times, there is a language barrier.
I mean, I think to his point, Scott,
Yeah.
and to the people who are asking the question, can the assessor's office or the administration hire one person during
Yeah.
this time
Yeah.
for those 6 days to translate for
Yeah.
those that need translation?
So I can only request. I can
So
only
not the
re-
documents,
request.
what the people
Yeah.
are asking only.
Yeah.
That would be awesome,
Yeah.
but they are
Yeah.
talking about what's going to happen throughout these days.
Sure. So what we will do is and I've spoke with the administration, and they're more than happy about getting someone there during our time, when residents come in.
Yes.
So that they can have someone there to translate in the event that, we are having a challenge.
Yeah, you can be
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
objective,
So-
independent.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. So, we're working those out, and like I said, we're going to do everything we can to make sure people are heard and get their constitutional rights. Sure, yeah, I hate to see anyone not get their right.
Scott, there's a a remark and a question. Hassan will remember this when we did this
Yeah.
with Gary, and it's very important. I'm going to say this in Arabic and English.
Yeah.
If you live in your home and you lived in your home for many years, and all of a sudden you have a large sum of money, you want to invest this money in your home, you want to change your existing bathroom, your existing kitchen,
Yeah.
you want to replace your windows, and you want to replace your roof. Let's say all of these repairs are going to cost you $75,000. By investing $75,000 in your home, and I want to hear it from you because we asked this question to Gary.
Sure.
The city cannot assess the existing homeowner on these new improvements because they are existing. You're replacing an old kitchen with a new kitchen. It does not affect the assessment of the home because they still live in the house. The same thing with the bathrooms. The same thing with the roof, because you
Yeah.
have a roof, and if it's leaking, you want to change it. So let's say you put a $30,000 roof on the house, then the
Yeah.
city should not change the assessment on that house based on making improvements on the house. Is that the case?
I would say not completely. Okay, and let me show you why. So Matthew Gas Act is what you're referring to. Okay, Matthew Gas was an act that, and it was named after 2 gentlemen who put the legislation together. What it does is it's designed for residents or homeowners to update deferred maintenance. Okay, so if you had a kitchen, as you said, and you replace your existing kitchen, and you had a roof, and you replace your existing roof, You know, those things are not to be placed on your taxable value. You can't, as an assessor, they can make an adjustment in the assessment, okay? But they should not put it on the taxable value where people get increased in taxes. Because at the end of the day, the Constitution is our driving force. It's still 50% of market value. So if you put in $100,000 of renovation into your house, I mean, the question is, did that really add that value to your house? Did your value change?
But it should not increase your taxes.
It should not increase your taxes, and that's the important thing. So I want to, the commissioners bring a great point, and so let me make sure I really dive into this so people understand this. If you're replacing existing items you have, okay, you got a driveway, you're replacing that, your whatever, your siding, your windows, whatever, and you make it even, you know, much nicer. You update it and everything like this. That's an adjustment. That is called just simply an adjustment on your assessment. And if you, though, come in and let's say you add an addition, or you didn't have a deck, now you have a deck. That's an addition. Those items will not only go on your assessment, they also go on your taxable. So that's where you'll see an increase in your taxes.
Yeah, when you increase the footprint of the house, and
Yep.
if you add an additional bathroom,
Yeah.
you would have additional assessment on
now,
the,
here's the trick part. Here's the tricky part. Cost doesn't necessarily equal value, right? So it isn't like if someone puts in 75,000, we get a building permit that comes through our department and it says 75 grand for doing all this remodeling. I mean, we have to look at that and see really what is the contributory value of that to the property. Now, just a thought, and I want to share this with the people. It's actually better for overall communities for assessment roles if we do adjust properties based upon their condition, because the closer we get that assessment to its actual market price, when it sells, where the county and the state, all the way back when I was talking earlier about where the process starts with the county, we want to get our assessments as close to 50% of a ratio as possible. If what we've noticed in this community, and I'll share with you what I've noticed, and this is kind of statewide, when you look at communities where they're a little bit older homes, okay? Let's say your average age is 60, 70 years old, right? Most houses in Michigan build around 40s. So it's easy to understand we're probably, you know, most of our houses are on there. If you got a property that's been sitting there, hasn't had a lot of updates, let's say it sells at around $100 a square foot, but then we see one next door that sold at maybe $150 a square foot. We're like, well, what happened? And the difference was the one at $150 had a lot of interior updates. So if we keep both of those houses at $100 a square foot and they sell, you're going to see a significantly lower assessment ratio on that one that sold for $150. And we don't want that. We want those to be as close as 50 as possible, because when the equalization department comes in and they've got a bunch of low assessments, they're going to tell me to increase that the assessment for that whole overall neighborhood pretty high. So if I can get the 150 at 150 and the 100 at 100, we're going to see more like 50% ratios, and that is going to soften your increases for your overall community. So it's important for us to come in and really focus on true market value. But the important thing for taxpayers to know is that we should not increase it for anything you're replacing. Whatever you've got, you're replacing it, that should never go on your taxable value. And if that ever happens, please
Scott,
call.
I'm asking you, what's the formula you're using to assess homes?
The formula?
Yeah.
Well, it's pulled out of market sales, so it's market activity, right? Sales. So the county is the first process, and they'll look at your overall assessment ratio per class compared to the sales, okay? So if they look at sales, so for instance, you know, a house that sells for $100,000, we're hoping that assessment is at 50, because then it's, you know, you divide them, you get 0.5, you're good. If the assessment is like 0.3, I'm sorry, if the assessment's at 30,000, it sells for 100,000, we're going to get a pretty low ratio. We're going to get a 30, right? And we're trying to target, the target for assessors is 50. So the county will look at the sales activity. So the sales activity will really drive how assessments get adjusted. So the most important thing assessors could do is keep an eye on the sales activity and adjust properties that they see are similar to that sales activity and get them in line. So in the event they do sell, we get as close to 50 as we can. I mean, that's our process. So it's really sales activity.
Okay.
I mean, there's no secret formula there. And if we're out of line, you pull up some sales because this assessment process is pretty good, but it's not perfect.
I want to say something.
سام بدي ارجع لك بس لانه انا ما عادش رح فينا ناخذ كامل. بدي اعتذر من كل المشاهدين لانه تقريبا زدنا نص ساعه على الحلقه 35 minutes. رح اعطيها لخضر باك، بس انا بدي اتشكر كل اللي كانوا عم يشاركوا بهذه الحلقه. مشاهده كثير كبيره، مشاركه كثير كبيره ايضا. هيدا اللي لازم بدنا اياه. حيلا شيء نحن بدنا نغيره بالمدينه اللي نحن عايشين فيها، بدنا نشارك بصنع القرار من خلال اذا في شيء مش مزبوط نعترض عليه، نوصل صوتنا. في سيتي كونسل ميتينج شاركوا فيها، في انتخابات جايه هلا للسيتي كونسل وللمير، كثير مهم. المير بيحدد كثير شغلات بالمدينه، لازم كمان نحن ننتبه ونشارك في صنع القرار ونوصل الاشخاص اللي حيوصلوا صوتنا، مثل الاستاذ سام بيدون اللي موجود هلا هو كمفوض بوين كاوني. لازم على طول نطلع على المشاركه في المدينه وصناع القرار والتاثير على صناع القرار وملاحقتهم لحتى نوصل اللي بدنا اياه. برجع لك استاذ خضر واستاذ سام.
ممنونك حبيبي وممنون كل المشاهدين. نعم اكيد بدنا نعتذر عن ما عرفنا نرد على كل تعليق، بس انا سام ما شاء الله فيري اكتف على الفيسبوك. فهلا هو اذا معك وقت سام اليوم بكره او حيلا ما اذا فيك بس تجو باك قد ما فيك. And Scott, I'm not sure if you're on Facebook as well, you can check this out and you can maybe respond back to some of the questions. مشاهدينا بدهم صدر خط حسان انه هيك مناسبات جدا مهمه لحتى الانسان يقدر يكون شريك في صنع القرار، مش فقط قاعد متفرج على الخط، يعني على السايد لاين. فمن هيك مثل ما قال حسين، في انتخابات هلا هذه السنه للسيتي كونسل، في انتخابات للمير، السنه الجاي حيكون في مقترح على البالت، عدد الانتخابات ايضا اللي حتكون موجوده السنه الجاي. فجدا مهم. بدي اعطي بس الكلمه الاخيره سام و last remark for you as well Scott before we finish this show. Sorry for keeping it for too long.
Oh, that's fine. My family's out eating right now. They're having a good time.
I just want to say this. أنا بدي أوجه تحية لأصدقائنا بالديربون كوميونيتي كونسل. الشباب يعطيهم العافية. They brought a lot of these issues to the surface. I've been doing it for many years, but I'm just one man, and I used to do it just to help a lot of people. But anyway, they brought it for the whole community. They're trying to help everyone. Scott, one of the problems that, and I'm speaking to you as a real estate broker now who's been here for over 30 years. One of the problems that we're having right now, that homes between the 150 to 200,000, 300,000, they're selling very quickly.
Yes.
When you get in the 700,000 to $1 million range, those high-end homes in my area, in the country club, a lot of these homes are getting affected now. I have 2 homes on the market for over $1 million, and the biggest problem we're having is the property taxes. What will the taxes be when the properties are sold? So the high taxes are beginning to affect the high-end homes in the city of Dearborn. There are many professionals, lawyers, doctors, business owners. They want to stay in Dearborn, but they're calculating how much taxes they have to pay. That's why many of them, they're making the decision to move out of Dearborn, mainly because of property taxes.
Sure. No, it's a great point, and if I may, bring up a good point on this. So one of the things that was brought to the table for me to address when I was hired as the assessor was to address the larger and more affluent homes, things like this. So, and as I shared earlier, like when you have a limited sales activity, regression analysis is a nice tool. We ended up using it this year. So overall, we got kind of dichotomous when you talk about the residential market. So a majority of the market went up in the city, right? Like I said, the whole overall class went up about 7.25% roughly, okay? But the larger homes, what I noticed by using the regression analysis model, we ended up dropping the overall assessments. When you look at the assessments from last year to this year, the majority, we got an average drop of around between 7 to 12% depending on the property. But so the majority of the larger homes, we've noticed an impact. But it's interesting, there's been quite a few reports showing that a lot of the $1 million homes throughout the southeast part of Michigan they had really high sales activity, but it got tight here in Dearborn. They got tight in Dearborn because, again, like you shared a mill rate, scares people.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of services here for that. I know, and if I may, I just want to touch on that. We get a lot of calls and questions about the taxes, and really, we're an assessment department. We just really deal with the assessments. But I mean, I just want to just throw a thought out there. Earlier, when I was alluding to where our assessment was in Dearborn, our SEV, as well as our taxable value, we've only bounced back from 2007. We're only at about 80%, 81% roughly, if you want to look at about 81% roughly, of where we were in taxable value in 2007. That means the administration, the council they're handling this entire community with only 80% of the money they had from 2007. Now, I know some of that's been adjusted through a millage increase, so it's not quite just 80%, but I mean roughly 80% of your taxable value. So it's pretty challenging. And when you look at Dearborn compared to other communities, we hear this a lot, we need to keep in mind that, for instance, townships tend to have less expenses than cities. Okay, so cities are always going to have more expenses, and they're going to have typically higher mill rates. But two, when you look at your services here, it's up to the taxpayers, right? What they wish, and there's tremendous services here. And one last thing I want to think about: other communities will tend to handle assessments a little bit different than what they do here. For instance, a lot of communities will say they may keep the mill rate low, but let's say they come in and do a
special assessment.
They'll do a special assessment. They'll push that whole burden onto just that area. They may say, okay, we're going to do new streets and new lights. So that area will get a special assessment. Dearborn does not do that. So they keep they address the whole community as a whole, and it doesn't push that burden onto just one group or one area. So it's it's a different mindset, and I think they do a pretty good job. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
Just trying to, share information.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Scott Miller,
Yes, sir.
City of Dearborn Assessor. We appreciate your time and your efforts, and we are here again. If you have any announcement or anything like that, we're more than happy to push that out to our community and to the Dearborn community, at large. So thank you so much for all that you did today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And if I may, we are going to keep putting more and more information out, these reports and these studies we do. We want to make them, accessible to taxpayers in the community, and we're going to try to do a far greater level of communication with taxpayers this year.
Awesome.
So we're working on it.
Awesome.
Come check us out. Give us a call. Shoot us an email, and we'll do what we can.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And Sam,
Yeah.
thank you so much also
Thank
for
you.
your time and
Thank
efforts.
you.
And for all that you do.
Before we finish?
No, thank you. Thank you for having us, Hassan, Khodr.
Of course.
Thank you, Scott, for a meaningful discussion.
Yeah.
And anybody has any other questions, just feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Sam Baydoun is super accessible on Facebook and all the social media. And Scott Miller, the office number again, رقم التليفون لسكوت ميلر من City of Dearborn Assessor is 313-943-2140. وسام بيدون ايضا على الفيسبوك وعلى السوشيال ميديا كمان. اذا عندكم اي سؤال او استفسار سامحونا اليوم تاخرنا عليكم. حسان كمان مشكور، وايضا سامحنا تاخرنا كمان اليوم، ولكن موضوع جدا مهم وموضوع متشعب وبده بعد ساعات وساعات من الحوار. قد ما فينا قدرنا ناخذ العديد من الاسئله والتعليقات مع ضيوفنا. متشكرين كثير سام وسكوت. وايضا بشكر كل السبونسرز: اي بي لايتنج اند سبلايز، مانجوز، ليمو اكسبرس، تهامس، بلجيو بانكوت سنتر، وايضا مالتي ميديا ستيشن. فبنشكركم جميعا مشاهدينا، بامان الله. ان شاء الله ملتقانا القادم الخميس الجاي الساعه 8. الى اللقاء.
مالتي ميديا ستيشن، متجرك الوحيد لجميع خدمات الوسائط الإعلامية المتعددة من ويب، صوت، صورة وفيديو. نوفر خدمة التسويق الرقمي وإدارة صفحات التواصل الاجتماعي للشركات والمحلات الصغيرة والمتوسطة. لدينا فريق عمل مختص بتصوير حفلات الزفاف والمناسبات. لمزيد من المعلومات الاتصال على 734-315-0718 أو زيارة موقعنا الإلكتروني themultimediastation.com.
IB Lighting Supplies متجرك الأول إن كنت تبحث عن إضاءة مميزة للمباني السكنية والتجارية، بالإضافة إلى الثريات الفاخرة المصنوعة من الكريستال بتصاميم عصرية وأسعار مدروسة. IB Lighting Supplies بإدارة عماد بوسي. زورونا الآن. هاتف 313-438-6516. العنوان 22325 Westbourne Avenue, Dearborn Heights.